It began with a knock. A dry desert wind whistled past the Valley of the Kings as British archaeologist Howard Carter stood at the sealed entrance of a tomb untouched for over 3,000 years. The year was 1922, and Carter's team had been searching for years, funded by the wealthy Lord Carnarvon, chasing whispers of a pharaoh lost to time, Tutankhamun, the boy king who ruled Egypt for only a decade. When Carter finally broke through the entrance and peered into the antechamber, he uttered the now famous words, "Yes, wonderful things." What he saw was a glittering hoard of golden statues, chariots, thrones, and alabaster jars. But what neither he nor anyone else knew in that moment was that this discovery would soon be overshadowed by whispers of a deadly curse. Just a few months after the tomb's opening, Lord Carnarvon, Carter's patron, died suddenly in Cairo. The cause? A mosquito bite on his cheek. It became infected. On the night of his death, it was said that all the lights in Cairo flickered and went out. At Carnarvon's estate in England, his dog howled and dropped dead at the same moment. Coincidence? Maybe, but the world was captivated. Newspapers ran with headlines like "The Curse of the Pharaoh Strikes." And so a legend was born. But was it just sensationalism? Or was there something more sinister lurking within the golden tomb of the boy king? Let's rewind for a moment. Tutankhamun Tut, as he's often called today, was a relatively minor pharaoh by Egyptian standards. He ruled from around 1332 to 1323 BCE, ascending to the throne at about 9 years old and dying at only 18 or 19. He was buried quickly and modestly compared to Egypt's great rulers, likely due to his unexpected death. That's part of why his tomb survived looters. It was small, forgotten, hidden under layers of debris. And that's what made Carter's discovery so shocking. Most royal tombs had long since been plundered, but this one was almost untouched. A sealed burial chamber, the golden mask, now iconic. Hundreds of ornate objects preserved perfectly by time and sand. It was the find of a century. And yet, from that moment forward, the deaths began to accumulate. Within a few years of the tomb's discovery, at least a dozen people connected to the expedition died under strange or sudden circumstances. Carnarvon's death was followed by the passing of George J. Gould, an American railroad magnate who visited the tomb and then died of a fever. Arthur Mace, one of Carter's excavation team, collapsed and died suddenly. A radiologist who X-rayed Tutankhamun's mummy also died shortly after. Even Carter's personal secretary, Richard Bethel, was found dead under mysterious circumstances in a London club. At one point, the curse gained such notoriety that it was rumored there were ancient hieroglyphs at the tomb's entrance warning, "Death shall come on swift wings to him who disturbs the king's peace." No such inscription was ever found, but by then, it didn't matter. The myth had already gripped the imagination of millions. But here's the twist. While the media relished the idea of a supernatural curse, most scientists remained skeptical. They pointed out that many of the deaths had natural explanations: disease, infections, bad luck. And most of the core excavation team, including Carter himself, lived for many years after the tomb's opening. In fact, Carter died in 1939, 17 years later, at the age of 64. Still, the idea of a curse wasn't entirely baseless. In recent decades, researchers have suggested that ancient tombs, sealed for millennia, may harbor toxic mold spores or deadly bacteria. One theory proposes that Carnarvon's infection might have been worsened by exposure to such pathogens, perhaps inhaled in the musty, long-sealed chambers of the tomb. It's not as glamorous as a curse, but it's plausible. Even modern science hasn't fully closed the book. In 2002, German microbiologist Dr. Gotthard Kramer investigated the tomb's air quality and did indeed find fungal spores capable of causing severe respiratory issues, especially for anyone with weakened immune systems. Could that explain some of the deaths? Perhaps, but again, not everyone who entered the tomb died, and the idea of selective targeting only deepened the mystery. The real power of the curse, however, may lie not in ancient magic, but in human psychology. At the time, the world was fascinated with Egypt. The 1920s saw a boom in Egyptomania fashion, art, jewelry, even Hollywood movies romanticizing the land of pharaohs. A curse made the story better. It added danger to the adventure. It made headlines sell. And for a public hungry for drama in the post-World War I world, the story of Tutankhamun's curse became irresistible. And yet, there is something undeniably eerie about it all. A young king, forgotten for centuries, his tomb sealed in silence. Then a team of men reaches that silence, and one by one, some of them die. Whether you believe in ancient vengeance, deadly fungi, or psychological suggestion, the result is the same. Tutankhamun's tomb became more than an archaeological site, it became a legend. The golden mask still stares at us through museum glass, cold, beautiful, unblinking. But behind those eyes lies a question that refuses to die. Was the curse of the pharaoh real, or the perfect myth for a modern world desperate to believe in ancient magic? So was it real? Did Tutankhamun's tomb unleash an ancient curse, exacting revenge on those who dared disturb its eternal rest? Or did the world, intoxicated by gold and mystery, simply see what it wanted to see? The line between legend and logic isn't always as clear as we'd like it to be. To understand the myth of the pharaoh's curse, we have to understand the time it was born into. The 1920s were an era of obsession with Egypt. Mummies were appearing in fiction, fashion, and film. Crowds lined up at museums to see relics from the Nile. Howard Carter's discovery was more than an archaeological triumph. It was a pop culture earthquake, and the media knew it. Newspapers from London to New York were in fierce competition, and sensational headlines sold copies. The death of Lord Carnarvon, the wealthy sponsor of the expedition, gave them the perfect story: a cursed tomb, a dead aristocrat, and a world hungry for the supernatural after the trauma of World War I. But let's look closer. Carnarvon died from blood poisoning caused by an infected mosquito bite, hardly an ancient spell. Others, like George J. Gould and Richard Bethel, died months or even years after entering the tomb. In total, of the 58 people known to be present when the tomb was opened, only about 8 died within a decade. Many lived full lives. Carter himself survived for 17 more years, working, publishing, and defending his discovery. Still, there were details too strange to ignore. Carnarvon's dog dropping dead back in England at the very hour of his death in Cairo. Lights mysteriously failing across the city. The rumor of the curse inscribed in the tomb, though later proven false, added fuel to the fire. Was this simply coincidence wrapped in cultural myth? Or was something darker at play? There is a scientific explanation that has gained traction: the microbial curse. When tombs are sealed for thousands of years, the environment becomes a perfect incubator for mold, bacteria, and fungi. Some of these microorganisms, especially species like Aspergillus flavus or Stachybotrys, can cause serious infections or respiratory failure when inhaled. Especially for those with weakened immune systems, a cloud of ancient spores could indeed be deadly. It's not magic, it's microbiology, and it's entirely plausible. In fact, researchers examining ancient tombs today often wear full protective gear, not because of curses, but because of pathogens frozen in time. But what about the psychological curse? The human mind is remarkably susceptible to suggestion. If you believe you are cursed, every coincidence becomes a sign, every ache a warning, every tragedy a prophecy fulfilled. In psychology, it's known as the nocebo effect, the dark twin of the placebo. Fear alone can be fatal. And in the high-stakes, high-drama environment surrounding the tomb's opening, that fear was very real. Still, there's something more haunting beneath the surface. Because whether or not there was a curse, people died. And even today, standing before Tutankhamun's funerary mask, its perfect gold, its almond-shaped eyes, it's hard not to feel watched. That sensation, that unease, is part of the legacy. Tutankhamun was a boy when he died, barely a king. His life was short and likely tragic-born with deformities, likely plagued by malaria, possibly the result of inbreeding common among Egyptian royalty. He didn't build temples or win wars. He wasn't meant to be remembered. And yet, he became the most famous pharaoh in history. Why? Because of a hidden tomb. Because of a brilliant archaeologist and a dead patron. Because of a world that needed magic again. In the end, the curse of the pharaoh may not be carved in stone, but it is written deeply into the cultural memory of the modern world. It asks us to consider something we often avoid, the boundary between science and superstition, between the known and the unknowable. And that is why the story endures. Not because of how Tutankhamun lived, but because of what happened after his death. Because of the glittering treasures that dazzled the world and the shadow they cast. So, was it death by curse? By microbe? By media? Perhaps all three. Or perhaps, as the ancient Egyptians believed, disturbing the peace of the dead comes with a price, whether you believe in it or not. Because sometimes, it's not the curse that's real. It's the fear it leaves behind.